So I was doing some digging with the old John Deere, and unfortunately as I was digging, I blew a hydraulic hose. These things happen. They happen right when you exactly don't need them to happen, but that's just how it is. So let's work on replacing the blown hydraulic line. So the hydraulic hose that actually broke was this one. You can see how this one's still like soaking wet, but this is the line that broke. And you see me flaking off this rubber. She's dry rotted all hell. It needs to be replaced. And whenever you're looking to replace hoses and stuff, look at all the hoses. So when we look at the one next to it, this one is going to be in the same condition and it's already flaking. So while you're here, change both of them because you're just going to have to come back to the equipment again when this line breaks. Ideally, you want to be using angled wrenches for hydraulic lines, but if you don't have angled wrenches, you can do it with regular box wrenches. You're just going to do some extra cursing. One thing to keep in mind is, equipment like this is usually out in the rain, subject to snow, debris, just like this one is. This tractor lives outside. So a lot of these fittings are going to be hard to break. I would highly encourage you to squirt some lube on all these things. It will make your life easier. So I am literally just spraying the hell out of these with PP Blaster. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to follow the hydraulic lines. So we're going to these two lines here that we're replacing, and let's go up, up. And when we're going up, we can see that they are going back here. So we're going to want to replace the connections back here. So let's also lube the hell out of these. Now, before we disconnect any hydraulic lines, one, you got to make sure the tractor's off. Don't be stupid. Your equipment needs to be off. This is a very high pressure system and it will harm you and arguably kill you if you're running the tractor trying to disconnect the line. Next thing you want to do is make sure there's no pressure on anything. So whenever I'm done using my equipment, I drop my bucket to the ground, I drop my hoe to the ground, and I don't apply any pressure. There's no need to. Just let your equipment sit comfortably. That's how you would want to sit, so sit that way. So when I'm looking at this thing, I can move the backhoe. There's really nothing, there's no pressure on anything. So I am comfortable disconnecting these lines. So when you're going to disconnect the lines, you want to be prepared because hydraulic oil is going to leak. It's not going to come gushing out, but it is going to leak. So you're going to want to get caps, rags, plastic bags, anything you can to prevent oil from coming out. So I'm going to show you two things I do in cases like this. So let's disconnect these two lines so we have room to get to the lines back there. There we go. Holy. And then it's typical when doing these hydraulic lines. But you can see now that I spun that off, now I can move this freely. But think about that, even all the lube after that, it's hard to do. All right, so now that the hose is gone like that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a cap on here. And then I'm going to use another cap. I'm going to plug the top of here. And I plug that. This is capped. I'm not leaking fluid everywhere. It's not a perfect seal, but it's going to make from heavy leaks to only drips. So this is what I use. I like to use plugs like this. I'll put a link in the description if you want to get some. But if you don't have these available, you can use a sandwich bag. And let's do that next. All right, so if you don't have plugs like this, I'll show you how you can do it with a little hefty bag. So I'm just cutting the top of this off. Again, we do not have to look pretty and nothing fancy. I'm cutting this in half, like so. And what we're gonna wanna do is create something that we can put inside the hole just like we did. So I'm gonna use this. Ripping off this in half, and I'm just stuffing the inside of this. And that's just creating a little wedge. So that's what I'll use to go inside the hole. And you're gonna wanna make it a little, you gotta have a little starting point. There we go. So this will be my one plug that I'm going to use. And then we got to cap it too. So capping it, you probably don't need a lot of this. I'll put a little bit in there. It'll just help stop the bleeding. So I got a little one there, and we'll cap it with this. All right, now it's free. I'm going to spin her off. And you can see how it's leaking already. So first thing I'm going to do is cap the one hydraulic line. You can see you got a lot of fluid coming out. So I'm capping this like so. All right, and put my little zip tie on here. Okay, so I'm just going to put one more zip tie here as double protection. Now that is my cheater way to do this. Ideally you want to get the plugs because you can move a lot faster and easier, but if you don't have them, you can use a sandwich bag. And now I'm not gushing liquid anymore. So now that I pulled the hoses out of the way, look how much working room I have to remove these. Okay, so now we have to disconnect these lines. And on these ones here, it's a separate cylinder, separate block. You're gonna lose fluid in here no matter what. You just gotta accept it. So remember, we're removing 2 hydraulic hoses that are on a closed loop, and that is a hydraulic cylinder. So you're gonna get hydraulic oil that's gonna leak out. You just gotta deal with it, accept it, set up secondary containments. I got oil catch cans on the bottom here, and let's do it. And that should do it. Yep. All right, so those 2 are loose. Okay, let's loose this up. All right, and remember you're gonna get hydraulic oil. So that's the bottom end, and this is the other end. So let's pull these hoses out. That's one. And let's pull this one out. And that's 2. Okay, so we got 2 hydraulic hoses out. I'm gonna put them in here. And remember to make sure you set up like a good little secondary containment so you can collect any oil. I don't think that's big enough. There we go. I'm gonna put a plug there just to prevent it dripping. And yeah. All right, so I'm gonna let those hoses drain out. And then what I'm gonna do is take them to the hydraulic shop, let them measure them up, size them up, and put new fittings on. All right, we just got back from the store and we got brand new hoses. These are looking good. For everyone's awareness, I'm going to thread these in. You do not need to use Teflon tape. These sit inside. You see how there's that inside bevel? This will be a perfect seat. No need for Teflon tape. All right, with both those in there, now we can start tightening these up. And you want to tighten these up by hand. It should go very easy, just like this one's going, until it gets tough. And when it gets tough, this is when you're starting to snug up on it. And you don't got to go crazy tight here, but you need to make sure that those 2 mating surfaces are flush and nice and tight. That's plenty tight. Okay, that's tight. Now we're gonna do everyone's favorite, the Ziploc bag. So let me go get wire cutters. We'll snip this off and then we'll put it back on. That's 1. And that's 2. And we got hydraulic fluid energized. Now it's getting tight. Get our other wrench. There you go. Nice and tight. All right, let's clean this up and then move to the bottom. So you're going to want to remember where your hose is lined up so you're connecting the right one to the right side. Otherwise you will have a controlling problem. And let's get this crap out of the way. Ooh, made this hose a little longer on me. Okay. There we go. Alright, now that's getting tough. You don't want to bend fully on the pipe. You got to have a counter here. So, and that is plenty tight. I'm happy with that. Let's connect this one. Those connections look good. So we're going to put the hose holder back on. And now we're going to refill this thing with some hydraulic oil because we lost some and then we got to run it. Now that all the connections are tight, take a look at how much oil we used here. So we drained, I don't know, maybe a quart of oil. I'm going to check to see where the hydraulic oil level is at. If anything, maybe I'll add a quart or two. So while the equipment's running, you always want to double check your work. You're always going to want to stay around and make sure you don't see any leaks anywhere. And we got no leaks here. Everything's looking good. So we're happy with the results. So now the tractor's off, doing one final check just to make sure there's nothing leaking. And it's always good to check this out, you know, a couple hours after the tractor's been sitting. Just because you want to make sure your connections are snug. You don't want to be leaking hydraulic oil all over the ground.